this is Jerry Scholl, and I want to give you a commentary on the music that we're playing in Etude number 6 by Tony Cirone from his Portraits in Rhythm. You've probably already heard the recording of the whole piece in its entirety. Let's talk about some parts of this piece and how to make it a little easier for you as you're preparing for your district and all-state auditions. First thing I wanted to talk about was the tempo itself. If you're feeling a little bit daunted and 63 to the quarter note with all those 30 seconds you have to play is just getting too taxing and you're making more mistakes than you would if you were playing it slower, then by all means play it a little slower. If you need to play it at 56 to the quarter note, go for it, or a little bit less, that's fine. I think that the most important thing for any adjudicator who's listening to a candidate for all-state or a district, they're listening to how good the performer can play it and how musical they can play it, as well as making sure that they're getting all the rolls and all the articulations and all the dynamics that are in this piece to make it as musical as possible. If you're playing it at 63 and you're fudging some of the rhythms and it's not coming out that great, then you're not going to be the person I'm probably going to hire. So I think if you played a little slower, you might have better success. That being said, I want to talk about a couple of things to make the piece a little bit easier. Some of them might sound a little bit complicated, but if you give it a try, I think that you'll find that it's a lot easier to think of this piece in some of the ways that I'm describing. The first thing that I really like to talk about is the roll, meaning how fast am I going to play the roll? What rhythm am I going to use to play the roll so that I have a smooth roll and I have a roll that is going to be perfectly in time? So for me, when I play this piece, for the most part, I use a 16th note triplet roll. So in the first bar, it'll sound like this. So if I break it down and take the roll strokes out but play the rhythm, it would sound like this. Put the roll strokes back in. Well, let's say that 63 is a little bit too fast for you. Well, if we're playing it a little slower, I could use 32nd note rolls, strokes for these rolls. So it would sound like this. Play it again without the roll strokes, but with the rhythm. So that's what you can do, and if you're feeling uncomfortable with the rolls, or you really want to make sure that you're playing the rhythm of the roll correctly, substitute all the rolls for a little while with just the rhythm, and then add the rolls themselves. So if I were to play the first two measures, it would sound like this. And then I can add the rolls later because I know exactly what strokes I'm going to use in order to play it. I will tell you that there are a few occasions where, even though I'm playing triplet rolls during the quarter notes and half notes, that during the eighth note rolls, I'm going to more often play a 32nd note roll. So if you look at the second measure of the second line, where we're playing pianissimo, and then we have a roll on the and of 4 to 5, I'll play 4 and 5 for you. If I take out the roll stroke, it sounds like this. So there again, I'm substituting the triplet that I was talking about, the 16th note triplet for 32nd notes. I do that also on measure 3 on beats 4 and 5, line 3 on measure 1 on beats 4 and 5. I also do a combination where in line 5, going into the 4th beat, you'll see that there's a 16th note roll on the of 3. So I put two 32nd notes there and then two 16th note triplets. So this is what it sounds like. Again, take out the rolls and put in just the strokes themselves. So that's how I do it. And I find that by using the 32nd notes, it helps me to have a better roll control and have the roll sound better for the forte there, as well as getting back into the pianissimo. I do it again at the beginning of line 6, where the and of 1 after playing 32nd notes, I actually play those 32nd notes too. So 4 32nd notes in the roll form and then to the 16th note triplet. So that's going to sound like this. Again, let me take out the roll strokes and it sounds like this. One of the other parts that I want to talk about is utilizing your drum in order to really help you with the dynamics. For instance, if we go to the second measure of line 2, we have pianissimo. I am going to play really about a ½ inch from the rim. And when I play a ½ inch from the rim, I'm going to play the same stroke here at pianissimo as I am an inch from the rim on the top of my remo sign. And you can already hear the difference in dynamic. When you get all the way to line number 10 and you play 3Ps, I move the stick right next to the rim. Same height of the stroke. And now I have 3Ps. Here's 3Ps, 2, and 1. Again, 3, 2, and 1. Really clearly 3 different sounds, and it makes it very easy to play. So let me play measure 2 of line 2 with the pianissimo, and then measure 2 of line 3 with the piano. Ready, go. Now line 3. Again, there's an easy way, just like I showed you, of using the drum to help you with dynamics. On the louder end of the dynamic side, we have these kind of mountaintop accents. You'll see them at the end of line 9, you'll see them at the end of line, or the beginning of line 4, beginning of line 7, at the very end of the piece. That's where we're going to play closer to the center. I actually saved the very center for the last notes at the end of the piece to make it really final. And that's okay, because the center of the drum here is kind of a dead sound. If I turn the snares off, it's very dead. Play here on the edge, you can kind of hear a ring. Again, I am using a muffler, and using a muffler is a good idea to take out a little of the ring. So when I play that last measure, I'm going to save the last couple of notes in the center. It changes the color, and it also really brings out those accents. Now we have those same kind of accents with 3 Fs at the end of line 9. With that, I'm going to play pretty loud, high sticks, but just a little off the center so I can still save that color at the end. You'll notice sometimes that also when I play, like in the first measure, I use one hand to play some of these notes. The reason I do it is because I think that I have a lot of control with my right hand, as many of you do, and I feel that I can have a real consistent sound. Since the notes aren't that loud, and I play with one hand, I get a very consistent sound. It always sounds the same. So let's try that. So I feel very consistent about that. And So that's where I will utilize that, where I'm using only one hand to play. But most of the time, I'll play with two, and obviously for the 30 seconds. Sometimes the 30 seconds are pretty difficult to count. So I want to give you an idea of a couple of ways you might rethink how you're playing. For instance, if we were to take line 2, instead of playing it at 5/4, what would happen if I turned it into 10/8? It's the exact same thing, 10/8 notes per measure versus 5/4 notes per measure. Same value. That means that the quarter note would equal two numbers. So for example, the roll on 1 would be 1 and 2. Then I would have 3E and a 4 and. The 2/16 notes would now be called a number in and. So 3E and a 4 and. Then 5E and a 6 and. Then 7/8 in the next roll, and 9E and a 10E and. Well, that makes it a lot easier to count. Let's try that again. 1 and 3E and a 4 and 5E and a 6 and 7 and 7, 8, 9E and a 10E and. Sometimes hard to say it out loud fast, but I think you can get the picture. There's another way you can do it too. Sometimes you can actually kind of change the whole measure around in order to make it easier. Let's take a look at the first measure of line 9. You'll notice that each one of the parts of that measure are all 30-second notes, but we have a lot of dynamic changes. If you notice, the first two groupings are fortissimo, and then there's a decrescendo on the third grouping to piano. Then in the next 4 groupings, you have a piano crescendo to fortissimo to the third grouping, and then back down to piano from the third and fourth grouping. Then you have a mirror image of what we just saw before, which was the very beginning, 2 fortissimos to a piano, and the last one we have is piano crescendo to 2 groupings of fortissimo. So if I actually divide them into a group of 3 in the beginning, and in the middle a group of 4, then a group of 3, I get this. So it's going to sound like 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and, then 1 E and 2 E and 4 E and, then 1 E and 2 E. So by having a 3 grouping, a 4 grouping, a 3, it makes it a lot easier for me to manage, and I remember it that way, and it makes it a lot easier to play, and I've got a lot more accuracy. So let's take a listen to it in tempo. 1, 2, 3, for me, it makes it so much easier. So those are just a few tips that I hope makes this piece, Etude number 6 by Tony Cirone, a little easier for you to work on and help you to have the best success you can while playing for your district and all-state auditions. If you have any questions, feel free to give me an email. Send me an email. You can email me at gerald.scholl@wichita.edu. You can find that on the Wichita State website, as well as my office number, which is 316-978-6155. I know in the past some of you have called me for lessons to really help them in getting prepared for these auditions. I am open for that, and feel free to give me a call. I look forward to hearing about your success, and thank you so much for watching this commentary on Etude number 6.